The city runs on a schedule it cannot see. It's 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. Javier Ruiz is not driving his usual route. The 53-foot refrigerated trailer behind his cab is parked at a truck stop just outside of Joliet, Illinois, its diesel tanks full, its cargo of California strawberries perfectly chilled. He's been here for 3 hours. On his tablet, the load board shows his next assigned destination, a Kroger distribution center in Indianapolis. The rate is acceptable. The problem is the map. A thin red line, indicating a traffic closure he didn't plan for, cuts across I-65. It's not an accident. It's a bridge inspection. The delay is listed as indefinite. He has 14 hours of federally mandated driving time left before he must take a 10-hour break. The strawberries have 48 hours of shelf life remaining from the moment they were picked. He does the math in silence. The delivery window will close before he can legally reach it. This is not a story about Javier Ruiz. This is a story about the single physical system that determines whether your city eats, heats, and functions beyond the weekend. A system that operates on a timeline measured in hours, not days. A system that, when it tightens, doesn't announce a crisis. It simply makes things more expensive, less available, and ultimately unreachable. This is Energy Historian, where we break down the systems that keep the modern world functioning. We call it just-in-time delivery. The term feels corporate, bloodless. The reality is visceral. Your supermarket does not have a warehouse. It has a loading dock. Your pharmacy's inventory is not on its shelves. It's in a tractor-trailer 2 states away. Your local hospital's backup generator has exactly 1 fuel delivery scheduled per week. The entire modern urban metabolism is built on the assumption of continuous, predictable motion. Remove that motion, and the city begins to consume itself. The fragility is not in the lack of goods, it is in the lack of time. Number 1 is food. This seems obvious, it is not. The counterintuitive hook is not that food stops arriving. It's that the variety collapses first, long before the calories disappear. Take Phoenix, Arizona, a desert city of 5 million. Every single leaf of lettuce, every gallon of milk, every chicken breast consumed there arrives by truck. The average supermarket carries 42,000 different items. The inventory turnover, the time an item sits on the shelf, is between 2 and 3 days for perishables. The supply chain buffer, the physical stock in distribution centers and in transit, is about 72 hours for fresh goods. Now trace one item, that gallon of milk. It was processed in Glendale, Arizona from milk that arrived by tanker truck from a dairy in Buckeye. The dairy's cows eat feed blended from corn, shipped by rail from Iowa, and alfalfa trucked from California. The plastic jug was manufactured in Texas from natural gas liquids piped from the Permian Basin. Each of those components, the feed, the plastic, the fuel for the trucks, arrives on its own just-in-time schedule. The mechanism is convergence. Dozens of independent streams must meet at precisely the right moment. If the diesel fuel for the feed truck is delayed by a refinery outage in Texas, the dairy's production schedule slips. If the plastic jug delivery is held up by a bridge weight restriction in New Mexico, the processor must halt bottling lines. These are not shortages of milk, they are fractures in the schedule. The downstream break is not empty shelves, it is substitution. You came for the gallon of whole milk from the local dairy. The shelf holds only a half gallon of organic milk from 3 states away, priced $2.50 higher. The system's first failure is a reduction in your choice and an increase in your cost. The calories remain, but your household budget absorbs the shock. The disruption is financial long before it becomes physical. Stability depends on systems you never see. Number 2 is medicine. We imagine hospitals have stockpiles. For some critical low-volume items they do. For the vast river of daily consumables they do not. This job has nothing to do with trucks or fuel. That's exactly why it disappears first. Consider a common life-saving item. Intravenous saline solution. It is essentially salt water. It is also one of the most logistically complex products in a hospital. It's heavy, bulky, and has a limited shelf life. Major medical distributors operate regional warehouses that service hundreds of hospitals on a 24-hour replenishment cycle. A hospital might hold a 2 to 3 day supply. The warehouse itself holds a 5 to 7 day supply. The manufacturer's production is continuous, feeding the warehouses like a slow-moving conveyor belt. The bottleneck is not the salt or the water. It is the sterile plastic bags. The production of those bags requires a specific type of medical-grade plastic resin. That resin is produced in only a handful of chemical plants globally. In September 2017, Hurricane Harvey struck the Texas Gulf Coast. Among the infrastructure it shut down were several plants producing that resin. The mechanism was invisible transfer. The hospitals in Houston flooded. The demand for saline in Atlanta, Chicago, and Boston spiked. But the resin shortage meant new bags couldn't be made fast enough to replenish the national conveyor belt. Within 3 weeks, hospitals thousands of miles from the storm were implementing conservation protocols, rationing saline, prioritizing its use for critical patients, switching to less ideal alternatives. No truck broke down, no warehouse burned. A single material input, thousands of miles upstream, constricted the entire system. The cost was absorbed by nurses and pharmacists scrambling to manage scarcity and by patients receiving second-choice treatments. Your cost of living moves before you understand why. 2 down. The next 2 are where the dependency becomes structural. Number 3 is energy itself. Not the electricity in your walls, but the diesel in the tanks of the trucks that bring everything else. This is the meta system, the fuel that moves the fuel. An urban area like Los Angeles County consumes roughly 10 million gallons of diesel every day. Less than 2% of that is held in local storage tanks. The rest is in motion, in pipelines, in tanker trucks heading from refineries, in the fuel tanks of vehicles themselves. The primary supply comes from a cluster of refineries in Southern California and from the Colonial Pipeline system that brings refined products from the Gulf Coast. These are not interchangeable sources. California's unique fuel blend means Gulf Coast fuel often cannot legally be sold there. On February 1, 2015, an explosion and fire shut down the ExxonMobil refinery in Torrance, California. It produced about 10% of the state's gasoline, but more critically, a significant portion of its diesel. The immediate effect wasn't a shortage at the pump, it was a price signal. Diesel futures on the spot market jumped 50 cents a gallon in a week. The downstream break was graduated abandon. Independent trucking operators who buy fuel daily and operate on margins of 5 to 8% saw their operating profit evaporate overnight. They began rejecting loads that required long, fuel-intensive hauls. They parked their trucks. The major carriers with bulk fuel contracts and fuel surcharge clauses kept running. The distribution network didn't fail. It contracted. It became more expensive and less responsive. Goods still reached Los Angeles, but the cost of their final mile delivery soared. That cost was baked into the price of every product on every shelf. The refinery was gone. The demand wasn't. Number 4 is waste. The system that carries things away is the mirror image of the system that brings things in. When it stops, the city's decay becomes visible within 96 hours. New York City generates approximately 12,000 tons of residential waste per day. Its sanitation fleet collects it, compacts it, and hauls it to transfer stations. From there, it is loaded onto long-haul trucks, trains, and barges that carry it to landfills in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina. This is a negative supply chain running in reverse, and it is just as time-sensitive. In 2018, a sustained period of heavy rain and flooding in the Midwest closed several major interstate highways. Trucking capacity seized up. In New York, the transfer stations began to fill. With no place to send the waste, collection trucks had to wait for hours to offload. Collection routes were delayed, then suspended. Within a week, bags of garbage piled up on sidewalks in several boroughs. The health hazard was immediate. The economic cost was secondary. Restaurants paid private carters triple rates for emergency pickups, retail businesses saw foot traffic plummet, and the city faced millions in fines and cleanup costs. The mechanism here is capacity saturation. The waste system has no inventory space. Its buffer is the speed of the truck. When that speed drops below the rate of generation, the system backs up into public view. The failure is not mechanical, it is geographical. A flood in Ohio directly increased the cost of doing business in Manhattan. Shortages begin long before shelves empty. We are 3 items deep into the list of what disappears: food variety, medical certainty, fuel affordability, and public hygiene. Each depends on a different part of the logistics web, but all share the same vulnerability, the 48-hour window. Now we reach the inversion. The item that seems most resilient, but is in fact the keystone. Number 5, and the one nobody sees coming, is uniformity. The modern supply chain is not just fast, it is standardized. Every pallet is the same size, every shipping container has the same corners, every truck trailer is built to the same width. This standardization is what allows the system to move with such ruthless efficiency. It is also its greatest point of failure. Look at the Port of Los Angeles. On a normal day, it processes the equivalent of 20,000 20-foot containers. The cranes that lift them, the trucks that carry them, the rail yards that sort them, all are built for the standard container. Now, introduce a discontinuity. In March 2021, the container ship Ever Given blocked the Suez Canal. The immediate story was about delayed goods. The structural story was about the schedule. Hundreds of ships were stuck in queue. When the canal reopened, they all arrived at European ports simultaneously, overwhelming the standardized unloading systems. The cranes, trucks, and rail cars were suddenly in the wrong place at the wrong time. The ports clogged, the schedule, the sacred timeline of just-in-time delivery shattered. But here is the asymmetry. When the system of uniformity fails, the cost is universal, but the benefit is not. Who wins? The owners of the very few alternative pathways. When container shipping from Asia to Europe was disrupted, the cost of air freight for high-value electronics and pharmaceuticals skyrocketed. The airlines and freight forwarders with spare capacity made record profits. Meanwhile, every retailer, manufacturer, and consumer paid more for everything or waited longer. When the terminal ran dry, the futures desk booked a record quarter. The independent trucker sat in his cab, watching the operating margin disappear. Same shortage, same day, different position in the chain. The pattern has appeared before. This is not hypothetical. In the winter of 1973, the Arab oil embargo did not cause immediate gasoline lines in the United States. First, it caused a panic in the diesel futures market. Trucking rates spiked. Small operators without contracts went bankrupt. The distribution network contracted within 6 weeks, before the gasoline shortages hit the consumer. The mechanism is documented. It is a replay. The dependency remained. You paid the difference. So what holds this 48-hour city together? It is not stockpiles. It is not government reserves. It is the assumption of perpetual cheap diesel and frictionless highways. It is the assumption that Javier Ruiz and a million drivers like him will always find a clear road and an affordable fuel stop. It is the assumption that the convergence of 100 supply streams will never ever fail simultaneously. But they can, and they have. The Texas freeze of 2021 took out refineries and chemical plants. The pandemic lockdowns of 2020 broke the synchronization between production, shipping, and consumption. The bridge collapse in Baltimore in 2024 removed a key node from the highway network. Each event was a localized shock. Each shock propagated through the standardized, time-sensitive system, transferring cost, reducing choice, and tightening the options for everyone downstream. You insulated your home, bought the efficient car, did everything right. You are still exposed. Your stability depends on the diesel price in a refinery corridor you've never visited and the delivery schedule of a driver you will never meet. The system you depend on every day was not designed for your survival. It was designed for throughput. Your resilience is measured in the hours of buffer you don't control. Which of these 5 dependencies do you think is the easiest to break? Is it the food, the medicine, the fuel, the waste removal, or the uniformity of the system itself? The answer reveals what you still assume is solid ground. If this kind of clarity matters to you, subscribing is the simplest way to stay ahead of it. The system was never meant to be obvious. Now you're one of the few who can see it.